The scent of pine needles and ceremonial oils hung heavy in the air, mingling with the unmistakable musk of wolves in their human form. I pressed my back against the rough wooden wall of the ceremonial hall, trying to make myself invisible among the sea of excited bodies. The mating ceremony happened once a year, when the moon reached its fullest point in the autumn sky, and it was the most important gathering for our kind. A celebration where eligible wolves found their mates, strengthening bloodlines and forming new alliances between packs. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. Not someone like me. My fingers instinctively reached for the small silver pendant hidden beneath my simple dress, my mother's last gift before she died. A half-moon shape with delicate engravings that told the story of her human heritage. "Remember who you are," she had whispered as she placed it around my neck years ago. Neither fully one nor the other, but something rare and special. I had learned to hide it well, just as I had learned to hide so much else. The pendant felt cool against my skin, a reminder of the secret I carried in my blood. Half wolf, half human. A hybrid that most pure-blooded werewolves would sooner chase out of their territory than welcome into their ceremonial hall. My wolf was weaker, my senses duller, my place in the hierarchy non-existent. Yet here I was, brought along as a handmaiden to Eliza, the daughter of our pack's beta, because no one else was available to help her prepare for the night she might meet her mate. "Stay in the shadows, Claire," Eliza had instructed me earlier, while I helped her into her ceremonial dress. "Don't draw attention. Just be there when I need you." She wasn't cruel, not really, just practical. A half-wolf at the mating ceremony was like bringing a sparrow to an eagle's nest, an oddity, a potential embarrassment. I watched as the hall filled with members from 5 different packs, their hierarchies evident in their positioning. Alphas and their families took the raised platform at the far end of the hall. Betas and their bloodlines occupied the front rows, and warriors and hunters filled the middle. Those of lesser ranks, the healers, the providers, and other wolves without prestigious bloodlines, took whatever spaces remained toward the back. Where did someone like me belong? Nowhere, everywhere. I was a ghost, passing through their world. The drums began to beat, a primal rhythm that seemed to call to something deep inside me. Even my half-blood responded to it. I felt the weak wolf inside me stir, reaching toward the sound like a plant bending toward sunlight. The ceremony was about to begin. "Claire!" Eliza's sharp whisper cut through the noise. She motioned frantically from several rows ahead. "I need water. Quickly!" I nodded and slipped away, grateful for the excuse to move. The ceremonial hall was built as a vast circular space, with rows of wooden benches arranged in a half-moon facing the platform where the alphas sat. Behind the benches, tables laden with food and drink lined the walls, prepared for the feast that would follow the formal ceremony. As I reached for a crystal goblet to fill with water, I felt the atmosphere in the hall shift. The drumming intensified, and a hush fell over the crowd. I turned to see what had caused the change, and nearly dropped the goblet. The Northern Pack had arrived. Unlike the other 4 packs already assembled, the Northern Pack rarely participated in inter-pack gatherings. They lived in the coldest, most remote territories, and rumors about their savagery and strength spread like wildfire among the southern packs. Their Alpha King was said to be the most powerful werewolf alive, a true apex predator who had killed his own father to take the throne. No one knew his age or the full extent of his powers, only that he had never taken a mate, despite being in his prime. And now he was here, standing at the entrance of the hall with his entourage. Even in human form, there was no mistaking his dominance. Tall and imposing, with shoulders that seemed to fill the doorframe, he surveyed the room with eyes so pale they appeared almost silver in the torchlight. His dark hair was longer than was fashionable in our southern packs, falling past his shoulders in a way that seemed both wild and regal. But it was the scar that captured everyone's attention, a jagged mark that ran from his right temple down to his jaw, white against his tanned skin. A battle wound that he wore like a crown. The entire hall had gone silent, and I realized I had been staring far too long. I quickly filled the goblet and turned to return to Eliza, but in my haste, I took a wrong turn. Instead of heading back toward the middle rows where she waited, I found myself walking alongside the empty seats reserved for the highest-ranking visitors, seats that would now be filled by the northern pack. "Excuse me," I murmured, trying to correct my path, but it was too late. The Northern Alpha and his entourage had begun to file into the reserved section, and suddenly I was caught in their procession, the goblet of water still clutched in my hands. I pressed myself against the wall, hoping to become invisible as they passed. One by one, imposing figures in dark furs and leather strode by, their eyes sliding over me as if I were nothing more than a shadow. I might have escaped notice entirely if not for what happened next. The Alpha King stopped. Just as he was passing me, his steps faltered. His head turned slowly, nostrils flaring slightly as he inhaled. I knew what he was doing, scenting the air, scenting me. Horror washed over me in a cold wave. My scent, my half-wolf, half-human scent that I tried so desperately to mask with herbal baths and special oils. Could he detect it? Would he expose me? His silver eyes locked onto mine, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, he studied me with an intensity that made my knees weak. Then, to my absolute shock, he moved. Not away from me in disgust as I had expected, but toward the empty space beside me. "Here," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. His beta, a severe-looking man with sharp features, leaned in. "My king, those aren't your assigned seats. The alphas sit at the—" I said here. The words weren't loud, but they carried such authority that the beta immediately fell silent. And so, with my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest, I found myself standing beside the most feared and powerful alpha in all the packs, as he claimed the bench directly beside where I had been pressed against the wall. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the space next to him. I looked desperately toward Eliza, who was staring at me with wide, horrified eyes from across the hall. The goblet in my hands trembled, water threatening to spill over the rim. I can't," I whispered. "I'm just a handmaiden. I need to return to my—" "Sit," he repeated. And this time there was something in his voice that bypassed all rational thought, speaking directly to the wolf inside me. My legs folded beneath me before I could even process what was happening. And suddenly I was seated beside the Alpha King of the Northern Pack, aware of hundreds of shocked and confused eyes upon us. The ceremonial drums faltered for a moment before resuming their rhythm. Whispers erupted throughout the hall like the hissing of snakes. Even his own pack members exchanged bewildered glances. "Your name," he said, not looking at me but straight ahead, as the ceremony began to recover from the disruption he had caused. "Claire," I answered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. "Claire," he repeated, as if testing the weight of my name on his tongue. Then, so quietly that I almost missed it, "You smell of moonlight and secrets." The elder officiating the ceremony had begun to speak, his voice rising above the drums as he welcomed the 5 packs and explained the sacred traditions of the mating ceremony. But I could focus on nothing except the heat radiating from the alpha beside me, and the terrifying possibility that he had recognized what I was. For the next hour, I sat rigid beside him, clutching the now warm goblet of water that Eliza would never receive, barely breathing as the ceremonial rituals unfolded. Eligible wolves were called forward in order of their rank to present themselves before potential mates. Traditional dances were performed. Ancient vows were spoken. And all the while, the Alpha King remained beside me, his massive presence both terrifying and somehow magnetic. I could feel the stares, hear the whispers. Who was this plain-looking girl with the light hair, seated beside the Northern Alpha? Was she important? Was she being punished? Was this some sort of political statement? When the first part of the ceremony concluded, and people began to rise for the feast portion, I saw my opportunity to escape. "I must go," I whispered, finally setting down the goblet and preparing to stand. "My lady needs me." His hand shot out, closing around my wrist with surprising gentleness, despite the obvious strength I could feel contained within his grip. "Your lady?" His silver eyes narrowed slightly. I serve as handmaiden to Eliza, daughter of Beta Reynard of the Southern Woods Pack, I explained, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. A smile curved his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. Not anymore. Before I could ask what he meant, he stood, pulling me to my feet beside him. His towering height made me feel even smaller than my already modest stature. With his hand still wrapped around my wrist, he turned to face the startled faces of his pack members. "This one," he announced, his voice carrying despite its measured tone, "will attend me during our stay." His Beta's face contorted in shock. "My king, we brought your usual attendants. There's no need to." "Are you questioning me, Thorn?" The temperature of his voice seemed to drop several degrees. The Beta named Thorn immediately lowered his eyes. "No, my king." The Alpha turned his silver gaze back to me, and there was something in his eyes that sent a shiver down my spine, not entirely from fear. "You will attend me at the feast," he said, and though it was clearly a command, there was a strange note in his voice, almost like curiosity. "And after." As he led me toward the feasting tables, I caught a glimpse of Eliza's face, pale with shock, and something that looked uncomfortably like anger. I had no idea what to do, how to explain, or even what was happening. The only thing I knew with certainty was that somehow, impossibly, the most powerful Alpha in all the territories had singled me out. And I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew exactly what I was hiding. The feast hall buzzed with tension, hundreds of eyes tracking our movement as the Alpha King led me between the long tables. My legs felt like water beneath me, and I struggled to match his purposeful stride. The hand around my wrist was both a brand and an anchor, keeping me from fleeing yet searing me with unwanted attention. "My king," a voice called out, and the crowd parted to reveal the elder who had officiated the ceremony. His weathered face was carefully composed, but I could see concern flickering in his eyes. "We've prepared the traditional seat of honor for you at the Alpha table." The Northern Alpha stopped, his thumb absently brushing against my pulse point in a gesture that sent an inexplicable shiver through me. I wondered if he could feel my heart racing beneath his touch. "I prefer to observe before I engage," he replied, his deep voice resonating through the suddenly quiet hall. "Prepare a table apart. For two." The elder's eyes flicked to me, then back to the Alpha, confusion evident. "As you wish," he conceded with a slight bow. Within moments, attendants scrambled to set up a small table on a slightly raised platform at the side of the hall. It offered a perfect vantage point to survey the entire gathering while remaining separate from it, precisely what a predator would choose, I thought with growing unease. As we approached the table, I finally gathered the courage to speak. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, just loud enough for his enhanced hearing to catch. He didn't answer immediately, guiding me to a chair that an attendant held out. Only after we were both seated, with platters of roasted meat and honeyed fruits being placed before us, did he lean slightly toward me. "You ask dangerous questions for someone with secrets in her blood," he murmured, reaching for a goblet of deep red wine. Ice flooded my veins. "I don't know what you mean," I lied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. His lips curved in the barest hint of a smile. "Your heart beats faster when you lie. Another tell to add to your collection." He took a sip of wine, those unnerving silver eyes never leaving my face. "Eat. You'll need your strength." "For what?" I asked, even as I hesitantly reached for a piece of bread. "For surviving the night," he replied simply, as if commenting on the weather rather than making what sounded disturbingly like a threat. Across the room, I spotted Eliza, now seated with her family. Her father, Beta Reynard, was deep in conversation with our pack Alpha, both casting frequent glances in our direction. Eliza herself was glaring at me, her perfect features twisted with a mixture of confusion and betrayal. I couldn't blame her. I'd abandoned my duties to her, however involuntarily. "They're wondering if I've taken a sudden interest in claiming you as a mate," the Northern Alpha commented, following my gaze. "It would be politically troublesome. Your Beta's daughter was hoping to secure an alliance with my pack through marriage." I nearly choked on my bread. That's ridiculous. I'm just a handmaiden." "Are you?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me with unnerving intensity. "Tell me about your mother." The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. My hand automatically went to the hidden pendant beneath my dress. "She died when I was young. I said carefully. And your father? A warrior from my pack. He died in a border dispute before I was born. This, at least, wasn't a lie. My father had indeed been a wolf, though not the high-ranking warrior my mother had told everyone he was. A convenient story to explain her pregnancy after returning from a solitary journey. The alpha seemed to consider this, taking another slow sip of wine. And yet here you are, with a scent like no wolf I've ever encountered. His voice dropped lower, like moonlight filtered through human skin. My blood turned to ice. There it was. The acknowledgement of what I'd feared since the moment he'd paused beside me in the ceremonial hall. He knew. Please, I whispered, unable to keep the desperation from my voice. If you expose me, they'll cast you out? He finished, setting down his goblet. Or worse. The southern packs have always been traditional in their views on purity. Tears pricked behind my eyes, but I blinked them back furiously. Showing weakness before a predator was never wise. If you know what I am, then why haven't you already exposed me? Why this charade? For the first time, something like genuine emotion flickered across his scarred face, an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Perhaps I find you interesting. Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance of the feast hall drew our attention. A group of warriors burst in, their clothing torn and bloodied. The hall fell silent as they staggered toward the main alpha table. Attack at the eastern border, one of them gasped, loud enough for the enhanced hearing of everyone present to catch. Rogues, at least 30. They've breached the outer defenses. The feast erupted into chaos. Warriors leapt to their feet. Alphas began barking orders, and frightened murmurs spread through the lower-ranked wolves. The northern alpha rose in one fluid motion, his entire demeanor shifting. The man who had been unsettling but controlled beside me transformed into something far more dangerous before my eyes. Thorn, he called, and his beta materialized at his side almost instantly. Gather our warriors. Thorn nodded sharply, but hesitated, glancing at me. And the girl? The alpha's hand descended to my shoulder, the weight of it both reassuring and possessive. She stays with me. My king, with respect, a battle is no place for— I didn't ask for your assessment, Thorn. The beta fell silent immediately, bowing his head in submission, before disappearing into the crowd to carry out his orders. The alpha turned to me, and I was startled by the fierce intensity that had overtaken his features. Stay close, he commanded. Do exactly as I say. I should find Eliza, I protested, searching the chaotic crowd for my mistress. His grip on my shoulder tightened. Your loyalty is misplaced. Did they ever show you the same concern? The question struck deeper than he could know. No, they hadn't. I was tolerated, useful, but never truly one of them. Even Eliza, who had been kinder than most, saw me as little more than a convenient handmaiden. Still, I hesitated. I'm not a fighter. I'll only slow you down. A strange expression crossed his face. There are different kinds of strength, little half-moon. The nickname, referring to my dual nature, sent an odd shiver through me. Now come. He led me through the panicking crowd with remarkable efficiency, his mere presence causing wolves to part before us. Outside, the night air was crisp with autumn's chill, and the full moon hung heavy and bright above us, partially obscured by racing clouds. Warriors from all 5 packs were assembling in the clearing before the ceremonial grounds, forming into units with remarkable speed, despite having been feasting moments before. I spotted Eliza being escorted to one of the secured lodges with the other high-ranking females, and felt a pang of something like envy. At least she knew her place in all this. The Northern Alpha guided me not toward the safety of the lodges, but toward a group of his own warriors who stood apart from the others. They were easy to distinguish, taller, broader, with an aura of barely contained savagery that made even the other pack's warriors give them a wide berth. My king, one of them acknowledged, then frowned at the sight of me. The female should be with the others. She stays, the Alpha replied in a tone that brooked no argument. He turned to me. Can you ride? I blinked in surprise. Yes, but— Before I could finish, he whistled sharply. From the shadows of the nearby stables, a massive black stallion emerged, trotting directly to him without bridle or saddle. The beast was enormous, with eyes that seemed to gleam red in the moonlight. No ordinary horse, I realized, but one of the rare shadow steeds bred specifically for alpha wolves. "This is Midnight," he said, running a hand along the horse's muscular neck. "He'll bear us both." "Both? You can't mean to take me into battle." His silver eyes gleamed. "Not into battle, but I won't leave you here." "Why?" I demanded, frustration finally overcoming my fear. "Why do you care what happens to me? I'm nothing to you, nothing to anyone here." Something dangerous flickered in his expression. "You are wrong on both counts," he said quietly. Then, before I could respond, he lifted me effortlessly and placed me on the horse's back. A moment later, he swung up behind me, his chest solid against my back, arms encircling me as he took hold of the horse's mane. The intimate position made me stiffen, unused to such close contact with anyone, let alone a male, and an alpha at that. "Relax," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "I can feel your fear, but you're not in danger from me." "Then what am I in danger from?" I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he called out to his warriors. "We ride for the eastern ridge. The rogues will have used the mountain pass. We'll cut them off before they reach the ceremonial grounds." With a squeeze of his powerful thighs, he urged the stallion forward, and we were suddenly flying through the forest, the Alpha's warriors following close behind. The cold night air whipped at my face, and I found myself instinctively leaning back into the solid warmth of the Alpha's chest. The forest blurred around us as the shadow steed moved with supernatural speed, effortlessly navigating the darkened paths. Behind us, I could hear the sound of other horses and the occasional howl as some warriors chose to shift into wolf form to run alongside. "Why would rogues attack during a mating ceremony?" I asked, having to raise my voice against the wind. "It's sacred ground." His arms tightened almost imperceptibly around me. "That's precisely why. All 5 packs gathered in one place, focused on rituals rather than defense. It's an opportunity they wouldn't miss." "But what do they want?" I felt, rather than saw his grim smile. "Power, territory, females, the usual things men fight for." There was a pause before he added, "But this attack feels different, too coordinated." We emerged from the forest onto a ridge that overlooked a narrow mountain pass. The Alpha reined Midnight to a halt with just the slightest pressure of his hands. Below us in the pale moonlight, I could make out a disturbing sight. Dozens of figures moving through the pass, some in wolf form, others in human shape carrying weapons. "There," he murmured, his lips close to my ear. "Do you see how they move? In formation. Rogues don't typically maintain that level of discipline." He was right. Even with my weaker half-wolf vision, I could tell these weren't the disorganized bands of outcast wolves that occasionally troubled pack territories. They moved with purpose, like trained warriors. The Alpha issued quiet commands to his men, who dispersed along the ridge with silent efficiency. Then, still holding me securely before him, he guided Midnight down a narrow path that led to a small cave set into the mountainside. "You'll wait here," he said, dismounting and then lifting me down. The casual display of strength, handling me as if I weighed nothing, was yet another reminder of the power difference between us. "Alone?" I couldn't keep the apprehension from my voice. His expression softened fractionally. "Midnight will guard you. He's worth 10 warriors." He ran a hand along the great horse's neck, murmuring something in a language I didn't recognize. The stallion nickered softly in response, and positioned himself at the cave entrance. The Alpha turned back to me, and in the moonlight filtering through the cave entrance, his silver eyes seemed to glow. "Stay here. Stay quiet. I'll return for you when it's safe." "What if you don't?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Something flashed across his face. Surprise, perhaps, that I would be concerned for his safety. Then his lips curved in a smile that transformed his harsh features, making him look younger, almost boyish despite the fearsome scar. "I'm not so easy to kill, little half-moon." He reached out, and for one breathless moment, I thought he might touch my face. Instead, his fingers found the silver chain around my neck, drawing out the hidden pendant from beneath my dress. He studied the half-moon shape with its delicate engravings, something unreadable in his expression. "This was your mother's," he said. Not a question. I nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in my throat. His thumb brushed over the engravings. "Keep it close. Remember who you are." Then, so quietly I almost missed it. There is power in being both, rather than one or the other. Before I could respond to this cryptic statement, he released the pendant and stepped back, his expression once again becoming the impassive mask of the Alpha King. "I'll return soon. Trust no one else who comes." With that warning, he was gone, disappearing into the darkness beyond the cave entrance with predatory silence. Midnight shifted his position, effectively blocking most of the opening, his massive body providing both protection and warmth against the night's chill. I sank down against the cave wall, drawing my knees to my chest. The events of the evening swirled in my mind like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. How had I gone from being an invisible handmaiden to sitting in a cave under the protection of the Northern Alpha King? And more importantly, what did he want from me? He knew my secret. That much was clear. Yet instead of exposing me, he had claimed me as his attendant, separated me from my pack, and now hidden me away during an attack. None of it made sense. Unless... A chilling thought occurred to me. What if he needed something that only a half-wolf could provide? There were old stories, dark tales of blood magic that required mixed blood. Was that why he had singled me out? Was I to be a sacrifice of some kind? The howls of wolves in battle echoed distantly from the pass below, and Midnight's ears flicked back and forth, alert to every sound. I clutched my mother's pendant, drawing comfort from its familiar shape. "Remember who you are," she had told me. Neither fully one nor the other, but something rare and special. The Alpha's words echoed her sentiment. There is power in being both, rather than one or the other. But what kind of power, and at what cost? Time passed with agonizing slowness in the cave. I strained to hear the battle sounds, but they had faded to distant echoes, leaving me with nothing but my racing thoughts and the reassuring presence of Midnight standing guard. The massive shadow steed remained utterly vigilant, his ears constantly swiveling to track sounds I couldn't detect. I found myself tracing the engravings on my mother's pendant, remembering how she would sit beside me at night, telling stories of her human village where people lived without the complications of pack hierarchy and wolf politics. "They have their own kinds of strength," she would say, her voice wistful. "Humans build, create, imagine. They don't need fangs or claws to change the world." As a child, I'd been ashamed of my human half. It made me weaker, slower, less than the pure-blooded wolf children who sensed my difference and excluded me from their games. But my mother had insisted it was a gift. "You see with both eyes," she would tell me cryptically. "One day, that vision will matter." A sudden shift in Midnight's posture snapped me from my memories. The great horse's ears pricked forward, and a low rumble emanated from his chest. Someone was approaching. I pressed deeper into the shadows of the cave, heart hammering. The Alpha had warned me to trust no one else who came. What if it was rogues? Or worse, someone from my own pack who would recognize what I was? Midnight relaxed slightly, which I took as a good sign. A moment later, a familiar, imposing silhouette filled the cave entrance. The Northern Alpha ducked inside, his presence immediately filling the small space. Even in the dim light, I could see dark splashes on his clothing that I knew instinctively were blood. "Are you hurt?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked almost surprised by my concern. "No, the blood isn't mine." His silver eyes assessed me carefully. "You're unharmed?" I nodded, rising to my feet. "I heard fighting. Is it over?" "For now." His expression darkened. It was a diversion. The main force attacked the ceremonial grounds from the west. While we pursued this group, fear clutched at my heart. The others, Eliza, the ceremonial grounds were defended successfully. He cut in. But there were casualties, and several females were taken. Taken? The word came out as barely more than a whisper. The Alpha's jaw tightened. Rogues sometimes steal females, especially during mating ceremonies. It's an old, barbaric practice. "We have to help them," I said, moving toward the cave entrance. An unexpected protective instinct surged through me. I might not have been fully accepted by the pack, but I had grown up with these wolves. The thought of any of them in the hands of rogues was unbearable. The alpha caught my arm. "You're not going anywhere near the rogues' territory." "But I didn't protect you only to deliver you into greater danger," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. I stared up at him, confusion and frustration warring inside me. "Why are you protecting me at all? You still haven't explained why you singled me out, why you're keeping my secret. What do you want from me?" For a long moment he was silent, studying my face with those unnerving silver eyes. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from some deep, weary place inside him, he released my arm. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing toward the cave entrance. Midnight moved aside to let us pass, and the alpha led me along a narrow path that wound up the ridge, away from the direction of the battle. The full moon illuminated the forested landscape below us, casting everything in silver and shadow. In the distance, I could see smoke rising from what I assumed was the ceremonial grounds. 20 years ago, the alpha began, his deep voice oddly quiet against the night air. A northern female left our territory without permission. She was not high-ranking, but she was special. She could see things before they happened. Small things, usually. Where the best hunting would be, when the weather would change, which matings would produce the strongest cubs. My steps faltered slightly. He continued walking, forcing me to keep pace. "She was gone for nearly a year," he continued. "When she returned, she was different, quieter. Her gift had changed too, stronger in some ways, absent in others. The pack elders questioned her extensively about where she had been." "What did she tell them?" I asked, though a cold certainty was beginning to form in my chest. His eyes met mine. That she had spent time among humans. That she had fallen in love with one. That she had borne a child, who she left with that human, knowing the northern pack would never accept a half-blood. My breath caught in my throat. You think I'm that child? I know you are." There was absolute certainty in his voice. "Your scent. It carries echoes of northern territory, of pine forests and snow-covered mountains, and beneath that," he leaned closer, inhaling deeply near my neck, making me shiver. "The unmistakable scent of Della's bloodline. Della. A name I'd never heard before, yet it resonated within me like a bell being struck. My mother told me her name was Eleanor," I whispered. "A human name she adopted during her time away," he confirmed. "But she was born Della of the Silver Lake bloodline, distant cousin to the northern royal line." I stopped walking, my mind reeling with implications. If what you're saying is true, then why did she end up with the Southern Woods Pack? Why did she claim my father was a warrior who died? The alpha's expression hardened. "Because she was fleeing from me." Cold fear trickled down my spine at his words. "From you? Why?" "Not for the reasons you're imagining," he said, reading my expression easily. "I was not king then. My father was, and he was obsessed with Della's gift. When she returned, changed, he became convinced that her child, you, would possess unique abilities that could strengthen our pack. He wanted to find you, take you from your human father, and my mother fled to protect me," I finished, the pieces falling into horrible place. He nodded. "She sought asylum with the Southern Pack, creating a new identity, claiming her mate had been one of their own. They accepted her, though they never fully trusted her, and when she died, they kept me on as a handmaiden," I said bitterly. "Useful, but never truly part of the pack." Something like anger flashed across the alpha's scarred face. "They knew what you were. They must have. No pure-blood wolf would have your scent." I shook my head. "Only the previous alpha and my mother's closest friend knew the truth. When they died, the secret mostly died with them. The current leaders might suspect, but as long as I'm useful and unobtrusive, they overlook what's right in front of them," he finished, disgust evident in his tone. We reached the top of the ridge, where the view opened up to reveal the vast territories of all 5 packs spread below us. In the center, smoke still rose from parts of the ceremonial grounds, but I could see wolves moving about, rebuilding and tending to the wounded. "You still haven't answered my question." I said softly. What do you want from me? The Alpha was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon where his northern territories lay. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its habitual hardness. When my father died and I took the throne, I made a promise to myself that I would find Della's child, not to use you as he would have, but to offer you your birthright, a place among your mother's people. He turned to me, silver eyes gleaming in the moonlight. I've searched for years, sending scouts to all the neighboring packs, and tonight by pure chance I found you. Birthright, I repeated, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. I have no birthright. I'm half human, and half northern wolf, he countered. With northern blood comes northern strength, even diluted as yours is. I laughed without humor. I'm the weakest wolf in the southern pack. I can barely shift, and when I do, my wolf form is underwhelming. Because you've been taught to be ashamed of what you are, he said, stepping closer, because no one has shown you how to embrace both halves of yourself. His proximity was unsettling, his scent, pine and winter wind and something distinctly male, wrapping around me. I forced myself to stand my ground, though every instinct told me to step back from this predator. And you could teach me? I asked, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. Yes. The simple confidence in that single word was staggering. Before I could respond, a howl rose from the direction of the ceremonial grounds, a signal. The Alpha's head turned sharply toward the sound. They're calling a council of pack leaders, he explained, to discuss the attack and the taken females. You should go, I said, suddenly exhausted by revelations and fear, and the weight of a history I hadn't known was mine. He studied me for a moment. Come with me. I blinked in surprise. To a council of alphas. I'm just a... If you say just a handmaiden one more time, I might reconsider my promise not to hurt you. He interrupted, though there was something almost like humor in his eyes. You are Della's daughter, of the Silver Lake bloodline. You have as much right to be there as any beta. The other packs won't see it that way, I warned. And if they realize what I am, you'll be under my protection, he said firmly. No one will dare challenge that. The absolute certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver through me. A reminder of just how powerful he was, how dangerous he could be if crossed. Why would you risk political complications for someone you just met? I asked. Someone who isn't even a pure wolf? For a moment, something raw and honest flickered across his face, so quickly I almost missed it. Because I know what it's like to be judged for what you are, rather than who you are. His hand moved unconsciously to the scar that marred his face. Because Della was kind to me when others feared me, and because I made her a promise. What promise? I asked softly. That if I ever found her child, I would offer protection, not exploitation. His eyes held mine. I keep my promises, Claire. The way he said my name, with a kind of gentle emphasis, made something flutter in my chest. I pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the practical aspects of his offer. If I go with you to this council, what happens after? You return to the north, and I remain here as Eliza's handmaiden? His expression darkened. Is that what you want? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? I'd never really been asked before. My life had been about survival, about being useful enough to keep, invisible enough to avoid scrutiny. I began, then stopped uncertain. Yes, he prompted. I want to understand who I am, I finally said. What I am. My mother died when I was too young to learn everything I needed from her. I've been hiding for so long, I'm not sure I know how to be anything else. Something softened in his silver eyes. Then perhaps it's time you stopped hiding. A second howl rose from the ceremonial grounds, more urgent than the first. We should go, he said, offering me his hand. Midnight will carry us back faster. I hesitated, staring at his outstretched hand. Accepting it felt symbolic somehow, like stepping through a doorway I could never recross. I don't even know your name, I realized suddenly. Everyone simply called him King, or Alpha. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Asher, he said. My name is Asher. Asher. The name suited him somehow, strong and ancient like ash after fire. I took a deep breath and placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and he led me back toward where midnight waited. The ride back to the ceremonial grounds was both faster and more comfortable than our earlier journey. Perhaps it was because I was growing accustomed to Asher's presence behind me, or perhaps it was because I now understood something of his interest in me. Either way, I found myself leaning back against his chest without the earlier tension, allowing his warmth to seep into me as midnight carried us swiftly through the forest. As we approached the ceremonial grounds, the devastation from the attack became visible. Several buildings had been burned, and wolves in both human and wolf form moved among the wreckage, carrying the wounded and rebuilding what they could. Asher guided Midnight toward the main hall, which had survived mostly intact. Outside, a group of stern-looking men stood in a tight circle. The alphas of the 5 packs, I realized, along with their highest-ranking betas. As we dismounted, I spotted Eliza standing with a group of females near the hall entrance. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and she immediately broke away, hurrying in our direction. "Claire," she called, relief evident in her voice. "You're alive." When the rogues attacked, I thought. She stopped abruptly, her gaze shifting to Asher, who stood protectively close behind me. Her expression changed from relief to something more guarded. "My alpha is looking for you," she said to him, lowering her eyes respectfully. "I'm aware," Asher replied coolly. "Claire will be accompanying me to the council." Eliza's eyes snapped to mine, shock evident. "But she's just a valued member of my entourage," Asher cut in, his tone brooking no argument. Confusion flashed across Eliza's face, but she was too well trained in pack protocol to question an alpha directly. Instead, she turned to me. "Claire, what's happening? Why is he treating you like—" She trailed off, unable to find the right words. I opened my mouth, not sure what I was going to say, when Asher's hand settled lightly on the small of my back. "The council is waiting," he reminded me, his voice gentler than I'd heard it before. "I'll explain later," I promised Eliza, though I had no idea how I would explain any of this. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "My father won't like this. Your father's opinion is not my concern," Asher said dismissively, guiding me away. As we walked toward the group of alphas, I whispered, "You're making enemies for me. You already had enemies," he replied quietly. "They just didn't see you as important enough to acknowledge before." Before I could respond to this unsettling observation, we reached the circle of pack leaders. Conversation died as they noticed our approach, all eyes fixing first on Asher, then sliding with obvious confusion to me. The Southern Woods Alpha, my alpha technically, stepped forward. Alpha Kent was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, his once dark hair now shot through with gray. His expression was a careful mask of neutrality, but I could see the question in his eyes as he looked at me. "King Asher," he greeted formally. We were about to begin. "Then it's fortunate we arrived in time," Asher replied smoothly. Alpha Kent's gaze lingered on me. "Perhaps your attendant would be more comfortable waiting inside with the other females." Asher's hand pressed more firmly against my back. "Claire will stay." A ripple of murmurs passed through the assembled leaders. I caught fragments of whispered questions. "Who is she? Why would he bring a handmaiden? Look how he stands beside her." Alpha Kent's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. "As you wish." He turned to address the full group. "The rogues have taken 7 females, 2 from my pack, 3 from the Eastern Valley pack, 1 from the River pack, and 1 from the Mountain Ridge pack. None from the Northern Territories," observed one of the other alphas, suspicion clear in his voice. "The Northern pack arrived last and was positioned furthest from where the main attack occurred," Alpha Kent pointed out, though I could hear the same suspicion underlying his reasonable words. "Are you suggesting my pack had something to do with this attack?" Asher asked, his voice deceptively soft. The temperature of the gathering seemed to drop several degrees. I felt the subtle shift in Asher's stance, a predator preparing to strike if necessary. "No one is suggesting anything," Alpha Kent said quickly. "We're simply trying to understand what happened and how to respond." Asher nodded, but his posture remained alert. "Continue." "We've tracked the rogues' scent to the Dark Hollow," Alpha Kent said. "They've established a camp there, well defended and difficult to approach without being detected. We should attack immediately," declared one of the other alphas. a younger man with fierce eyes who I recognized as the Mountain Ridge leader. Before they can move deeper into unclaimed territories, a direct assault would endanger the captives, countered the River Pack Alpha, an older female with silver-streaked auburn hair. We need a more subtle approach. As the leaders debated strategy, I found my attention drawn to a map spread on a table nearby. It showed the territories of all 5 packs, with the unclaimed lands, including the Dark Hollow, marked in darker ink. Something about the rogue's position nagged at me. Without thinking, I stepped forward to study the map more closely. The conversation halted abruptly, all eyes turning to me. "What is she doing?" someone muttered. I felt Asher move to my side, his presence both reassuring and intimidating. "You've noticed something," he said. Not a question, but a statement. I nodded, suddenly nervous with so many powerful wolves watching me. The Dark Hollow. It borders all 5 territories. If the rogues are establishing a base there, they could launch attacks against any of us, Alpha Kent finished, his expression thoughtful as he studied the map. But why take females? Rogues usually raid for food and supplies. Rogues don't typically operate with the kind of coordination we saw tonight either, Asher pointed out. His hand moved to rest lightly on my shoulder, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the other leaders. "What are you thinking?" he asked me directly. I swallowed hard, gathering my courage. What if they're not rogues at all? What if they're trying to establish a new pack? Silence fell over the group of alphas. Alpha Kent's eyes narrowed as he studied me with new interest. "A new pack?" The River Pack Alpha repeated slowly. "That hasn't happened in generations. It would explain why they took females," I continued, emboldened by Asher's supportive presence. "And why their attack was so coordinated. They're not just surviving, they're building. If true, this is worse than random rogue violence," said the Eastern Valley Alpha, a lean man with sharp features. "A new pack establishing territory would threaten all our borders." "The girl makes a valid point," Alpha Kent conceded, though he carefully avoided looking at me directly. "But who would lead such an effort? Creating a pack requires an alpha of considerable strength." "Vane," Asher said suddenly, his voice carrying a weight of history that made everyone turn to him. It could be Vane. The name clearly meant something to the assembled leaders. I saw recognition and alarm flash across their faces. "Vane is dead," the Mountain Ridge Alpha said firmly. "Your father executed him 15 years ago for treason. A body was never found," Asher countered. "And the attack tonight carried hallmarks of his strategies, the diversion, the precise timing, targeting females of breeding age." Alpha Kent's expression darkened. "If Vane lives and is building a pack, we have a serious problem." "Who is Vane?" I whispered to Asher, the tension around me becoming almost palpable. "My father's former beta," he replied quietly, before he attempted to seize the Northern throne. He was innovative in his cruelty. A chill ran through me at his words. The thought of such a man holding 7 females captive was horrifying. "We need to confirm if it's really him," the River Pack Alpha said, "before we commit to any course of action." "And how do you suggest we do that?" the Mountain Ridge Alpha demanded. "Send a delegation to ask politely?" "We need someone who can get close without raising suspicion," Alpha Kent mused. "Someone who might be able to infiltrate their camp." "I could go," I found myself saying, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Every head turned toward me, expressions ranging from shock to outrage to confusion. "Absolutely not," Asher said immediately, his hand tightening on my shoulder. I turned to face him, sudden determination flooding through me. "Think about it. The rogues, or whoever they are, won't see me as a threat. I'm not an obvious wolf. I could approach as a human traveler, lost in the woods." "It's too dangerous," he insisted, silver eyes flashing with something that looked almost like fear. "It's actually not a terrible idea," Alpha Kent said slowly, evaluating me with calculating eyes. "Claire has always been different, less wolf in her manner. She could potentially pass as human." I felt Asher stiffen beside me. "You know?" he said to Alpha Kent, his voice dangerously soft. "You've always known what she is." Alpha Kent didn't flinch under Asher's glare. "We suspected. Her mother was vague about certain details. But Claire has served the pack loyally, and we've protected her in return. Protected? Asher's laugh was cold. You've used her, kept her ignorant of her heritage, treated her as less than what she is. This isn't the time for this discussion. The River Pack Alpha interrupted firmly. We have 7 women to rescue. If Claire is willing to help, she's not. Asher stated flatly. I straightened my spine, something new and defiant rising in me. I am. Asher turned to me, genuine surprise in his expression. Claire, all my life, I've been tolerated because I'm useful, I said quietly, meeting his gaze. Let me be useful now, in a way only I can be. This isn't about proving your worth, he argued, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Isn't it? I countered. You said I should stop hiding, that I should embrace both sides of what I am. My human half could save those women. Internal conflict played across his scarred face. I promised to protect you, then help me do this safely, I challenged. But don't stop me from trying. For a long moment, he simply stared at me, something shifting in those silver eyes. Then, to my surprise, his lips curved in a reluctant smile. You have your mother's stubbornness. He turned back to the waiting alphas. Claire will attempt to gather intelligence, he announced, his authoritative tone making it clear this was non-negotiable, but not alone. I'll have warriors positioned within howling distance, and she goes nowhere near the camp until we have a detailed plan with multiple contingencies. Alpha Kent nodded, looking both relieved and surprised. Agreed. We should begin preparations immediately. As the leaders broke into smaller groups to discuss strategy, Asher guided me slightly apart. Are you certain about this? He asked, searching my face. You can still change your mind. I shook my head. I've spent my whole life trying to hide what I am. Maybe it's time to use it instead. Something that might have been pride flickered in his expression. Your mother would say the same. Tell me about her, I said impulsively. Della. What was she like in the north? His expression softened with memory. Quiet, but strong. She had a way of seeing through people. Not just predicting events, but understanding hearts. When my father became obsessed with her gift, treating her more like a tool than a pack member, she maintained her dignity and her kindness. Kindness toward you? I guessed. His hand moved unconsciously to his scar. I wasn't always as controlled as I am now. As a young wolf, my strength developed before my restraint. I hurt people, not intentionally, but the damage was done nonetheless. The pack feared me. My father saw only a weapon to be honed. But Della, she saw you, I finished quietly. He nodded. She taught me that power without compassion is just brutality, that strength can protect as well as destroy. The vulnerability in his admission touched something deep inside me. This feared Alpha King, revealing a gentler past, a deeper motivation than mere politics or power. Is that why you're helping me? To honor her memory? His silver eyes held mine. That's how it began, he acknowledged. But now I find myself wanting to help you for your own sake, he admitted. There's something in you, Claire, a strength that has nothing to do with wolf or human blood, a strength of spirit that reminds me what leadership should truly mean. Heat rushed to my cheeks at his words. Before I could formulate a response, Alpha Kent approached us. We've developed the beginnings of a plan, he said, his gaze moving between Asher and me with barely concealed curiosity. Claire would approach the camp tomorrow, posing as a human herbalist who's become lost in the forest. We've chosen this cover because it gives her a reason to carry certain items that might be useful, including wolfsbane paste that could temporarily mask her partial wolf scent if necessary. And what signal will she use if she identifies Vane or locates the captives? Asher asked, immediately focusing on the practical aspects. A small mirror to flash sunlight toward where our scouts will be positioned, Alpha Kent replied. Simple but effective. Asher frowned. And if she's caught, if they discover what she is, Alpha Kent's expression grew grim. Then she signals with this instead. He held up a small pouch. Crushed mountain ash berries. When burned, they produce a purple smoke visible for miles. It would be our signal to attack immediately. Full force. I took the pouch with slightly trembling fingers. The reality of what I was volunteering for suddenly felt very concrete. "We'll position warriors here, here, and here," Alpha Kent continued, indicating points on the map, close enough to respond quickly, far enough to avoid detection. Asher studied the map with narrowed eyes. "My warriors will be stationed closer, and I'll be with them." Alpha Kent looked like he might object, but something in Asher's expression made him reconsider. "Very well. We move at dawn." As he walked away, Asher turned to me. "You should rest while you can. Tomorrow we'll test every part of you, wolf and human." I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the night's events. Where should I go? I don't think I'd be welcome in Eliza's quarters anymore. "You'll stay in my camp," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Where I can ensure your safety." The proprietary nature of his statement should have bothered me. Instead, I felt an unexpected sense of belonging, something I'd rarely experienced in my life. As he guided me toward where the Northern Pack had established their temporary camp apart from the others, I was acutely aware of the stares following us. Word had clearly spread about the strange half-wolf girl who had somehow captured the Northern Alpha's attention. "They'll talk," I murmured. "Let them," he replied, unconcerned. "What others think is far less important than what we know to be true." "And what is true?" I asked, suddenly needing to hear him say it. He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. In the moonlight, with the ceremonial grounds spread out behind him and his silver eyes intent on mine, he looked like something from an ancient legend. "That you are not defined by what you lack, but by what you are," he said, each word deliberate and clear. "That being both wolf and human gives you a perspective neither alone could provide. And that tomorrow, that unique perspective may save lives." The simple confidence in his voice reached something long buried inside me, a hunger for acceptance that I'd denied for years. "And after tomorrow?" I dared to ask. His expression softened. "After tomorrow, Claire, you will have choices, real choices, perhaps for the first time." I didn't ask what he meant. Something told me I already knew. Dawn arrived with a pale, misty light filtering through the trees. I stood at the edge of the Northern Pack's camp, dressed in simple human clothing provided by one of the female warriors, loose trousers and a tunic that would allow me to move freely if needed, with my hair pulled back in a practical braid. A small satchel hung at my hip, containing various herbs, the mirror for signaling, and the pouch of mountain ash berries. My mother's pendant remained around my neck, now visible rather than hidden. When Asher had seen me tuck it beneath my collar out of habit, he had gently pulled it back out. "Don't hide it," he'd said quietly. "It's part of who you are." Now, as I prepared to leave, the Northern Pack gathered to see me off. They had accepted Asher's interest in me with remarkable equanimity, treating me with a cautious respect that felt foreign after years of being overlooked. Asher approached, his expression grave. He'd spent most of the night in strategy meetings with the other alphas, but somehow still looked commanding and alert. He carried something in his hands, a small knife in a leather sheath. "For emergencies only," he said, handing it to me. "It's silver-edged, effective against our kind if necessary." I took it carefully, noting the elegant engravings on the handle, the same crescent moon pattern as my pendant. "This is Northern work. It belonged to Della," he confirmed. I had it with me, hoping to return it to her child someday. The weight of the knife felt suddenly significant. Another piece of my heritage I hadn't known existed. I secured it carefully within my boot where it would be hidden but accessible. "Remember," Asher continued, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Your human side is not a weakness here. It's your strength. You can think and move in ways they won't expect from a wolf. Trust those instincts." I nodded, fighting down the fear that threatened to overwhelm my determination. If it's really Vane, what should I look for to confirm? Besides the obvious brutality? His jaw tightened. Vane has distinctive eyes, one blue, one amber, and a tattooed band around his right wrist, a wolf bite circling like a bracelet. I committed these details to memory, then asked the question that had been haunting me since the previous night. What if I can't do this? What if my wolf is too weak, or my human side too obvious? Asher's expression softened, and to my shock, He reached out to touch my cheek, a gentle, fleeting contact that sent warmth spiraling through me. "Claire," he said, my name sounding like something precious in his voice. "You've survived for years in a pack that never truly accepted you. You've maintained your strength and dignity in circumstances that would have broken many pure wolves. Don't underestimate yourself." His confidence in me was like a physical force, straightening my spine and lifting my chin. "I won't fail," I promised, as much to myself as to him. His silver eyes held mine. "Just come back safely. That's all that matters." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. This powerful alpha, feared throughout all territories, was looking at me with genuine concern, possibly even deeper emotions that I dared not name. "I will," I whispered. Alpha Kent approached, interrupting the moment. "It's time," he said, his gaze darting between Asher and me with poorly concealed curiosity. "Our scouts report minimal movement in the camp. Most will likely be sleeping after last night's raid." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'm ready." "Remember," Alpha Kent continued, "you're a human herbalist who became lost in the forest while gathering plants. You've been wandering for 2 days and are desperate for help. If questioned about where you came from, say you traveled from the eastern human settlement beyond the mountains." "And if they detect any hint of wolf in my scent?" I asked. "Use the wolfsbane paste," he instructed, "but only if absolutely necessary. It burns the skin and will only mask your scent for an hour at most." I patted the small container secured in my satchel, hoping I wouldn't need to use the caustic substance. With final nods to both alphas, I turned and began walking toward the forest path that would lead me to the dark hollow. I felt Asher's eyes following me until I disappeared among the trees. The journey took nearly 2 hours, following careful directions to approach the rogue's camp from the east, the direction a lost human would most likely come from. As I walked, I gradually shifted my posture and movements, adopting the slightly less fluid gait of a human. I softened my vigilance, allowing my eyes to miss details a wolf would notice, making my footsteps a little heavier than necessary. By the time I caught the first sense of the camp, wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and the distinctive musk of wolves in human form, I had fully embodied my role as a frightened, exhausted human woman. I purposely stepped on a dry branch, creating a loud snap, then called out in a tremulous voice, "Hello? Is anyone there? Please, I need help." Almost immediately, I sensed movement in the underbrush. 2 men emerged from between the trees, their stance and expressions instantly marking them as wolves despite their human form. Both were large and rough-looking, with the wary eyes of predators. "Well, what do we have here?" the taller one said, circling me slowly. "A little human, all alone in the big bad woods." I allowed my body to tremble, widening my eyes in what I hoped was convincing fear. "Thank goodness. I've been lost for days. I'm an herbalist from the eastern settlement. I was gathering plants and got turned around in the forest." The shorter man leaned in, sniffing near my neck. I flinched away, which wasn't entirely an act. His proximity made my skin crawl. "She smells interesting," he muttered to his companion. My heart rate spiked. Had they already detected my partial wolf scent? I clutched my satchel nervously, ready to reach for the wolfsbane paste if needed. "Please," I begged, injecting desperation into my voice. "I just need food, water, and directions back to the road. I have medicines I can trade." I gestured to my satchel. The taller man grinned, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp for a human mouth. "Oh, we'll take you to our camp, little herbalist. Our alpha will be very interested to meet you." They flanked me, not quite touching, but close enough to prevent escape, and led me deeper into the dark hollow. As we walked, I took careful note of our surroundings, mapping the path in my mind. I counted at least 3 sentry positions we passed, memorizing their locations for my report. The camp itself was larger than I'd expected. Dozens of makeshift shelters arranged around a central clearing where a large fire pit smoldered. Warriors moved about with purpose, carrying weapons and supplies. This was no disorganized band of rogues. This was indeed a pack in formation. My escorts brought me to a larger shelter constructed of animal hides and fallen logs. "Wait here," the taller one ordered, ducking inside. While he was gone, I scanned the camp as subtly as I could, searching for any sign of the captive females. Near the far edge of the clearing, I spotted a heavily guarded structure. The guards' positioning, facing both outward and inward, suggested they were keeping people in as much as keeping others out. The tall wolf emerged from the shelter. "He'll see you now." Taking a steadying breath, I stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by a small fire. As my eyes adjusted, I made out a figure seated on a crude throne of interwoven branches. A human herbalist, lost in my territory, a smooth, cultured voice observed. How convenient. As he leaned forward into the firelight, I struggled to maintain my frightened human facade. The man was handsome in a cruel way, with sharp features and a predatory smile, but what confirmed his identity were his eyes, one blue, one amber, regarding me with calculating interest. Vain. Alpha Kent and Asher had been right. "Please, sir," I began, forcing my voice to quaver. "I know what you need," he interrupted, rising from his throne. He was tall and lean, with the coiled readiness of a snake about to strike. "The question is, what do I need from you?" He circled me slowly, much as his warrior had done, but his assessment felt more penetrating, more dangerous. "An herbalist could be useful," he mused, stopping in front of me. "We have injured warriors and other guests who might require attention." "Guests?" I asked cautiously. His mismatched eyes gleamed with amusement. 7 lovely female wolves who will soon help me build the strongest pack these territories have ever seen, once they accept their new reality. Disgust and anger flared within me, but I carefully masked both emotions. "I'm not sure how I could help with wolves. I only treat humans." "You'd be surprised how similar we can be," Vane replied, his gaze lingering on my face. "There's something about you. Familiar somehow." My heart stuttered. Had he recognized something of Della in me? I quickly looked down, feigning intimidation. "I'm nobody important, sir, just a simple herbalist." He lifted my chin with one finger, forcing me to meet his gaze. "We'll see about that." The contact took every ounce of my willpower not to recoil. His touch felt wrong, invasive and cold where Asher's had been respectful and warm. "In the meantime," he continued, "you will examine our guests. If they die before fulfilling their purpose, it would be inconvenient." This was exactly the opportunity I needed, though the thought of what the captives might have already endured made my stomach clench. "I'll need my medicines," I said, gesturing to my satchel. Vane nodded to one of his warriors. "Search it." I stood perfectly still as rough hands pawed through my herbs and supplies. The mirror and mountain ash pouch remained hidden in a secret compartment I'd sewn into the lining, a precaution Alpha Kent had insisted upon. "Nothing dangerous," the warrior reported. "Take her to the females," Vane instructed. "Watch her closely." 2 guards escorted me across the camp to the structure I'd noticed earlier. Inside, huddled on pallets of straw, were 7 women in varying states of distress. Some bore visible injuries, bruises and cuts, while others simply stared with hollow, shocked eyes. "You have 1 hour, a guard growled, shoving me inside and taking up position by the entrance. I moved immediately to the nearest female, a young woman with dark hair and a swollen wrist that suggested a painful sprain. As I knelt beside her, I whispered, "I'm from the 5 packs. Help is coming." Her eyes widened, then quickly resumed their vacant stare, smart enough not to react visibly. As I pretended to examine her wrist, I murmured, "When I leave, be ready. Tonight, when the moon rises." One by one, I moved among the captives, offering what genuine medical care I could while passing my message in hushed tones. None of them betrayed me with so much as a flicker of expression. When the guard finally returned to escort me out, I had confirmed that all 7 were alive and able to move, though 2 would need assistance. Outside, I found myself brought before Vane once again. "Well?" he demanded. "They need better food and clean water," I reported, choosing my words carefully. 2 have injuries that require ongoing treatment. I'd like permission to make poultices for them." Vane studied me, his mismatched eyes narrowed. "You seem very concerned about wolves for a human. I'm concerned about all living beings." I replied, thinking quickly. It's why I became a healer. He smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. Admirable. You may make your medicines, but you won't be returning to your settlement. Your skills are too valuable to my new pack. Fear clutched at my heart, but I forced a grateful nod. Thank you for your protection. He waved a dismissive hand. Take her to gather whatever plants she needs. Keep her within sight of the camp. A young female warrior stepped forward to escort me. As we walked to the edge of the clearing, I carefully observed the camp's defenses, counting warriors, noting weapon caches. I needed just a few moments alone to use my mirror and signal Asher. I need barkseed, I told my escort. It grows on the north side of trees. And feverbane, the small yellow flowers there. I pointed to a spot just beyond the clearing's edge. The female warrior hesitated, then nodded curtly. Be quick. As I knelt to gather the plants, I positioned myself so my back was to her and the camp. With movements disguised as searching through undergrowth, I slipped the mirror from my satchel and angled it toward where I knew Asher's warriors would be watching. 3 quick flashes, the signal to confirm Vane's presence. 2 long flashes, captives located, alive. 1 circular motion, attack at moonrise. I had just returned the mirror to my satchel when a rough hand grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. Vane stood there, his mismatched eyes blazing with fury. Did you really think we wouldn't have sentries in the trees? He hissed, his fingers digging painfully into my flesh. I knew there was something wrong about you. He leaned in, inhaling deeply near my neck, then recoiled with a snarl. Wolf, he spat, but not quite. A half-breed abomination. Terror coursed through me, but alongside it came a surprising surge of defiance. I was done hiding, done being ashamed of what I was. Better a half-breed than a traitor, I retorted, meeting his gaze without flinching. Rage transformed his face. You'll regret those words when I'm finished with you. As he dragged me back toward the camp, I managed to reach into my satchel, clutching the pouch of mountain ash berries. I had failed in my subterfuge, but I could still signal the attack. With one desperate movement, I threw the pouch directly into the central fire pit as we passed. Purple smoke erupted immediately, billowing upward in a signal that would be visible for miles. Vane's roar of fury was drowned out by a more powerful sound, the combined howl of dozens of wolves converging on the camp from all directions. The last thing I saw before Vane's blow sent me spiraling into darkness was a flash of silver eyes and midnight fur as Asher, in his massive wolf form, crashed through the tree line, leading the charge.